As-salamu Aleikum. Hope you're doing well. This has been a long time request and I've been trying to figure out for the longest time how to structure this video, how to keep it simple, structured, provide a good foundation, inshallah, in a way that is not overwhelming or complicated, because I've been there. I know what it's like to want to connect to the Quran more, want to study it, but not know where to start. So I hope, inshallah, that this provides a very simple foundation to begin, and inshallah, you can then build on from here, inshallah. Okay, so what we have is, let's take the letters of Quran in English, Q-U-R-A-N, and inshallah we will use those letters to have a structured way to study the Quran, inshallah. So Q is quote the verse, U is understand the context, the background of the verse, R is read tafsir. There are a lot of tafsir works out there. There are scholars that have done so much work into tafsir of the Quran, and alhamdulillah for that. So read tafsir is number 3. A is apply this in your daily life. So personal reflection. What can you take from this verse? How can you apply it to your life? How does it resonate with you? And then N is next. What verse do you want to study next, or what surah do you want to study next, to keep the ball rolling? So inshallah you always have a plan to continue, inshallah, so that you don't stop, inshallah. It's very simple, and I'm going to walk through an actual example so you see how it's done, inshallah, and I hope that this at least provides a simple foundation that you can work off of and start, inshallah, and then inshallah you can build from there as you get more comfortable with studying the Quran. Okay, things you need. A pen to take notes. It's much more beneficial to be taking notes as you go, inshallah, and that way it helps you remember, helps you structure things, and you can always come back to it and read through it, inshallah, easily. So having a journal as well, or a notebook. Personally, I like using a bullet journal because it's easier than to also like draw boxes in different shapes and write in different ways, inshallah, instead of having structured lines where you feel you're a little bit confined. And then resources. I personally prefer physical books, so these are my two favorites, Tafsir Ibn Kathir and Tafsir As-Sa'di. They're a bit different in the sense that Tafsir Ibn Kathir, I would say, generally has more detail on some verses and ties it to different other verses in the Quran and so on, and different hadiths and so on, different references. Tafsir al-Sa'di, I would say, is kind of an easier, more simplified read, and I like using them both together because they are slightly different. So sometimes I'll get something from here and then add a little bit from here and so on, and it kind of completes the picture. There are resources also available online. You don't have to necessarily use physical books, so if this feels overwhelming to know what book to get and so on, there are resources online, and I'll walk through that in more detail, inshallah, when we do the example. And then you need the Quran, so you can look at the verses. Of course, this can be physical or it can be a digital version online as well. And lastly, come with an open heart, ready to welcome the words of the Quran into your heart. So come in a state where you're just ready to receive the message, the reflections, just ready to dive into it, inshallah. You don't need to have a pen and journal if you are, for example, doing digital note-taking, so it's really up to you how you want to structure it. I'm just the kind of person that really likes a pen and paper, physical books, everything physical. I don't really like working digitally, and I don't know, I guess it kind of feels safer to have physical things than to have something stored digitally, and just, I don't know, this feels, I trust this more. Just, I guess I'm old school in that way. So let's go through an example, inshallah. Let's pick a verse and let's walk through these steps, inshallah, so you can see how it's done, and I hope, inshallah, that it provides kind of a basis for you to feel less overwhelmed about approaching the Quran, and inshallah it feels a bit more manageable or achievable for you to do this on your own, inshallah.
Okay, so let's get all our materials ready, and inshallah today we are taking a look at Surah Al-Shams verse 12 as our example. So I'm writing it in Arabic, إِذٍ بَعَثَ أَشْقَاهَا, and then I'm also going to write the English translation under it. Next, I want to understand the context of the verse. In Tafsir Ibn Kathir, here's an example where they talk a little bit in more detail about the background of the verse. If you don't have a physical copy of Tafsir Ibn Kathir, totally fine. You can head over to Q.U.R.A.N.com, and there's a little book that says Tafsir next to the ayahs, and you have different tafsirs that you can look at. Tafsir Ibn Kathir is one of them, so you can scroll down and you can read a shortened version of what I am reading from the physical book. Okay, so now I'm just writing down the context, the background of what these verses are about. Okay, so let me share the context of what I'm writing for this verse. So one of the miracles of Prophet Salih alayhi salam was a she camel that was brought out from a rock as a sign for the people. Now this she camel was unlike any other. She could produce an incredible amount of milk that was sufficient for everyone there. But there was a condition. The camel would be given a day to drink from the water source there, and people were not allowed to drink on that day. Then the next day, people were allowed to drink, and so on. So they would have alternate days. Now they got tired and impatient of sharing their resources. So this is the background, and now we're going to dive into the specific verse. Verse says, إِذِ انبَعَثَ أَشْقَاهَا, when the most wicked of them went forth. So this is understood from the tafsir to be the leader of the tribe of Thamud. He was a noble person, very respected, and so he stood up and went forth, meaning he stood up to kill the she camel because, as we mentioned, they were getting tired and frustrated with this she camel, so they thought, okay, the solution is to kill her. So, how does this apply to us? How can we apply it to our daily lives? So, I'm just writing down some reflections now. One of the things is that we see that they had so much blessings. I mean, they had this unique she camel, they were blessed with so much milk from it. But what happened was they focused on what they didn't have. And the same thing can happen to us in our daily lives. We might get so focused on what we don't have and stop recognizing all the blessings that we do have. The other thing is that they had these blessings and they had restrictions, right? They had certain boundaries. And even us in our lives with the different commands from Allah and so on, we have blessings and we also have boundaries. And it's a reminder for us to stick to those boundaries that Allah has set for us. Okay, let's talk about these reflections because what if you have a verse and you're sitting and you're like, I don't really know what reflections to draw from it or how to apply this to my daily life? You can head back over to Quran.com and under that little tafsir book, you'll see another icon that's like a speech bubble. It says reflect. You can go there and see people's reflections on specific verses, inshallah. So that can kind of help you reflect and think through verses and see different thoughts that people came up with. And it's connected to a site called Quran Reflect. And again, you can also go directly to that site, Quran Reflect, and look up reflections. And then the last thing, we're just going to write down what we want to study next. It's much easier to make the decision now while you are reflecting on a verse than to come later and try to figure out where you want to pick up from. So make a decision, write down what you want to do next. And that's it, inshallah. So that's what it's looking like. You can also get creative, of course, and draw and color and be artistic and so on. I'm just showing a very basic outline to get you started, inshallah.
I hope, inshallah, that this was beneficial and it gave you a structured way how to start and approach the Quran. And may Allah keep our hearts open to the Quran and just touched by its words and continuously learning about the Quran and connecting with it. And may Allah make us people of the Quran. As-salamu Aleikum.